Hi, everyone. I'm immigration lawyer John Khosravi. It's October 26, 2021. We just added a new series in addition to the regular Q&A we do every week to do a discussion about U.S. immigration law with my associate, Anna Sergeeva. Anya, thank you so much for coming on and talking about updates and newsworthy stuff in U.S. immigration.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, John. I'm so happy to be here. Um, so let's get started.
Well, the big news is the COVID-19, which is news like endlessly for the last 2 years. But we finally got some easing happening with the travel ban. So just to give a backup, a heads up on people what's going on, what was going on is there was a travel ban for China, Brazil, EU, UK, Ireland, and those kind of places, South Africa, where you just couldn't get a visa in those countries. And if you visited one of those countries, you have to wait outside them for 2 weeks before you come back in. Finally, we got some relief of sorts on November 8th, where these restrictions are going to be eased and new restrictions are coming, vaccine related. A long post was issued by the State Department. The president issued an executive order talking about it. It was shorter. But could you talk about, I guess, to start, what is the big change that's happening?
Yeah, I've been researching this issue all morning today. It's a lot of it's a lot of information. As John mentioned, it's not just proclamation by the president. It's proclamation. It's CDC guidelines. It's Department of State instructions, and uh, it's like so much stuff that I'm
Different
afraid that we will not be
documents.
able to talk about everything today.
Yeah.
But in short, so all those proclamations that were restricting entry to the United States from those countries that John just listed, they all being revoked started November 8th.
Mhm.
So it's going to be easier for citizens of these countries to travel to the United States. But on the other hand, for other people who were not under those bans previously, it's going to be harder. Okay, so what are we going to have? After November 8th, everyone, all non immigrants traveling to the United States, have to have proof that they have been fully vaccinated from COVID-19. First thing, uh, it applies only to non-immigrants. So it doesn't apply to United States citizens. It doesn't apply to lawful permanent residents. It doesn't apply to US nationals. It doesn't apply to people traveling to the United States on immigrant visas. Apart from that, people who travel into the United States on immigrant visas, they have their own requirements that we need not to forget about. That after starting October 1st, everyone getting immigrant visa, they gotta have as part of their medical exam, they need to have proof of COVID vaccination.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to the new rules that starting November 8th, there are some exceptions. Okay, to this list. I'll just go over them really fast. So it's people traveling on like diplomatic visa, NATO visas, um, who are visiting United Nations headquarters, children, and for children, CDC guidelines says that children under 18 years of age, they're gonna be exempt from this from those new rules. Um, Also, non-citizens who participated or participating in certain clinical COVID vaccine trials, those are exempt too. Um, if a person have has some medical conditions preventing them from getting a COVID vaccine, you would not need to have that vaccine too. Um,
With regards to these exemptions, and it could get really nuanced, a lot, but uh,
yeah,
and then this one particular where a person can get the vaccine can be problematic because at the end of the day, you have to go to an airline and bring paperwork, and so there's always that hassle. It's not even U.S. customs, but the airline not accepting something. So they
right.
have requirements that they're going to check the paper. For example, if you have a paper proof that you have a vaccine that has your date of birth on your name, they're getting strict on that. But one of the things that popped up, which is problematic, and I was trying to find the exact answer to this. And I went to one website and then sent me to another, sent me another. I couldn't find it. Is which vaccines are acceptable? Obviously, they've said that FDA approved ones are okay. There's a list by the WHO for I think it's emergency use vaccines or something like that. But when I was trying to see the list, I couldn't find the exact list. There was a Korean one, there's a US one, obviously Pfizer and the like. But the big one is, for example, Sputnik from Russia, which Mexico said they're going to buy 10 million doses from, and all people from Eastern Europe and Iran and a lot of countries are using that
Right.
one. That's not on the list yet, it seems, but they're researching and looking into it.
From what I know, currently, as of October, what's today, October 26th, yes, Sputnik is not on the list of the approved vaccines. We'll see how it's gonna work. I hope it's gonna be there very soon because a lot of people will not be able to travel to the United States who are vaccinated with Sputnik.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, going back to exceptions. So there is this exception for people, for non-immigrants from these countries where the availability of COVID vaccines uh, is limited. There is a special list of these countries. Okay, and for example, around 40 or 50 countries are on this list currently, as of today. And for example, from former USSR, it's just Armenia. So Armenia is on the list, and mostly it's like African countries. From what I remember, it's Somalia, South Sudan, and some other countries. And this list, CDC will update this list every 90 days.
So what I read on Reuters, and I was trying to skim from the government stuff, I didn't catch it until I read Reuters, where they say it's like 50 countries where the nationwide vaccine rate is less than 10%. This is like Nigeria, which is a huge country, Egypt, another large population country, Algeria, Armenia, Myanmar, Iraq, Nicaragua,
Right.
Senegal, Uganda, Libya, Ethiopia, Zambia, Congo, Kenya, Yemen, Haiti, Chad, and Madagascar. Those are included as more than that. But they say those receiving an exemption will generally need to be vaccinated within 60 days of arriving into the United States. This is from Reuters.com, where I read that specific thing. But so everyone's going to get affected by this. A lot of people overseas who don't want to get the vaccine, they can't get around it now. Whereas before, as long as you didn't visit one of those countries, you would have been fine and stuff. So it is a switch up. It's still going to hit people and affect them.
Right. And we need not to forget that test requirement is still there. So
Yeah.
it doesn't go anywhere. So everyone who is vaccinated, either American citizen or green card holders or non-immigrants traveling to the United States, they gotta have the test taken within 3 days of departure. And for those who are unvaccinated, who, for example, fall under one of these exceptions,
Mhm.
or again, United States citizens who are not vaccinated, um, they can go back to the United States, but they need to have this test done within 1 day of
Yeah.
departure. And for some countries, it's a real challenge.
Yeah.
Three
That's
days is a real challenge, and I'm not even talking about 1 day. So it's
yeah.
going to be really, really hard to fulfill this requirement.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not vaccinated, essentially, come to the United States. You've seen how strict they are becoming on businesses here in government employees. That 1 day requirement is going to be really tough to try to match that up, and especially even in the U.S. Instead, like let alone coming from other countries, it's just going to push everyone to just get one of the required vaccines. Now, um, this vaccine issue is not only for travel, as you mentioned earlier. Immigrant visas get affected. So if you are applying for a green card, either through the embassy, consular processing, or in the US, that after October 1st, you will need to have the vaccine unless there's an exemption or you get a waiver, which is not an easy thing to do. The waiver is super complex. Frankly, I think most of them are going to be denied because they're just being really strict about this and the requirements.
Yes, another thing that I want to mention, there will be these people with immigrant visas who already gotten their visas, for example, before November 8th or even before October 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they did not have at this time COVID vaccine requirement to get in order for them to get their medical exam. And for example, they would want to travel now.
Yeah.
So my understanding from reading of these rules that they should be okay. People on immigrant visas with the medical exams done before the October 1st. They should be okay.
They should be okay to be able to get the visa, but even if they want to enter, they still need to get the vaccine or do the
like I was specifically talking about the issue for people who will be kind of in limbo
Yeah,
situation. So those people who already received their immigrant visas, for example, before October 1st, before the initial requirement for medical exam requiring COVID-19 vaccine um, started.
yeah.
Okay,
It,
so and immigrant visa usually it's lasts 6 months. So
yeah.
some people they don't want to travel right away to the United States. They wait, they like set their things up and everything. So for these people, it should not be a problem again for these people.
And then there's this complicated area for a small group of K-1 visa holders who, got the K-1 visa, enter United States. They're about to adjust status. They have filed for adjustment of status, but USCIS updates policy manual, and in it they said your medical has to include the vaccine, but they may not. They may have the vaccine, but it's not listed on their vaccine list that they did at the embassy if they took care of it beforehand. So it gets a little complicated, but for the most part, I don't think they'll need to add it to their medical checkup because USCIS looks at Form I-693, which is the civil surgeon in the United States. But if you're go to a panel physician overseas and do your vaccine requirement overseas, and then come within this window, you should be okay. If you're already in the United States adjusting status. But I'm sure I've had colleagues even who gotten RFEs for medicals on this. So it's going to be a weird situation if you're one of the K-1 visa holders who entered before vaccine requirements came, but you've done your vaccine requirement essentially overseas because nuance is that fiancé visa holders do have to do a medical checkup before the non-immigrant visa K-1 is issued. They don't have to do the vaccine. They can do that in the United States, but it's always recommendation for the most part people do it overseas. So there's going to be a lot of mistakes. There's going to be a lot of errors on agency part, government agencies, on airports. So be prepared for this. They might not accept your documents. This is just going to be baked in the cake that human error, user error is going to be happening throughout all this.
Yeah, and just general advice, have all these proclamations on hand that you can show that you fall under one of the exemptions. We don't know how it's going to work, how it's going to work in practice, because we still have 2 weeks until November 8th when they will start enforce this
Yeah.
new rules. So we will see. But talking about K1s, I just wanted to add that for them, even if they don't have to get originally COVID vaccine when doing their medical exam in their home country,
Yeah.
when getting visa, they will still fall under the new rules because K1 technically is non-immigrant visa.
Mhm.
So they say specifically that only holders of immigrant visas are exempt from
Yeah.
these new rules.
Yeah,
But
for the November
uh,
8th rule that's coming up. Yeah.
yeah, yes,
I'm sure you
from
confused
November.
everybody because it is confusing the fact that K-1 is a non-immigrant visa, even though it's going to get a green card. That's been a confusing thing in the statute from the very beginning. Make sure if you're doing this process, you're coming here, don't provide fake documents to do fraud. There are people that are going to use, fake proof of vaccination, and the State Department talked about this, maybe fines and criminal fees and issues that pop up for this. And we've been seeing this. I talked with a colleague in London, and she was telling me that in the airport in London, every day they're seeing people bring fake marriage certificates with US citizens to try to avoid the previous travel ban that was there, the 2 week travel ban if you have to leave and all that kind of stuff. And they catch it, they look into it. I don't know how, because in the US, marriage certificates are so complicated to look up, but because of the 50 states and everything. But please don't even think you could do this because the consequences are high. In the documentation, in the stuff they wrote, they didn't exactly say this is going to be considered immigration fraud and cause inadmissibility issues, but I wouldn't put it past them or CBP issuing a 5 year ban or a fraud ban, and it's going to be really difficult to fix that. So please, everyone who's watching, don't do something like that. It's better just not to travel here than to use fake documentation. All right. Well, if you are interested in learning more about the immigration process, please email us at info@jqqlaw.com to describe your situation, and we'll follow up with you with more information about scheduling a time and talking with us about the immigration situation you're dealing with. I know it's very complicated, so it's very important to talk with an immigration attorney and really analyze things before you make any big decisions. Having said that, I want to talk about one issue that it just pops up more and more, and it's particular USCIS is more strict about it than if you're at the embassy doing consular processing. And this is regards to birth certificates from various countries. Anya and I work a lot on every country in the world, essentially. And we constantly, and recently especially, are getting issues with like almost every birth certificate having problems with regards to the issuance date being incorrect, names being incorrect, missing information, not existing for like India, for example. A lot of times they don't have birth certificates. Could you talk about the one issue in particular that I want people to be aware of, which is late registration of your birth certificate, what that means and why it's an issue?
Yes, John, sure. So I don't know for why reason or for what reason, but recently we've been seeing a lot of these birth certificate issues, specifically when the birth is registered late. So what does it mean? For example, you have your birth certificate, okay, and your parents, for some reason, they had you and they registered that you were born 3 months later, 1 year later, or 5 years later.
Yeah,
Okay, and there will be this gap between your birth and when the official document confirming that you are who you are. Um, there will be this gap between these two dates,
yeah,
and that's what USCIS is looking into. So everything that's more, I would say, 3 months can be a problem.
yeah. Yeah, it's a big problem. Sometimes let you get away with a year or more, but anything more than 3 months, ideally, it's like within the first month, 30 days, 60 days, maybe 90 days. Anything more than that, that automatically triggers our office where we have to do a bunch of additional work to document that your birth certificate is correct. You are who you are, because you might get an RFE or a denial because of that. And I've seen denials happen after the fact. People come to me for late filed birth certificates. So, we had a case of fiance visa holder whose case was clean. And a lot of times people say, well, why do I need an attorney? I have these easy cases. And their case is pretty straightforward and clean. But once we got started, we got the birth certificate, which is the foreign national's birth certificate is not even needed if they're overseas until the second step. So, kind of to say quickly, when you're doing a marriage or fiance case, at first we submit applications and petitions to USCIS. I just prove that their relationship is real, and it's a U.S. person filing, either green card holder or citizen. The K-1 context, the fiance visa context, you have to be a citizen. And we don't even need to submit the birth certificate. But part of our responsibilities as immigration attorneys is to review all the documents, even stuff not needed for 6, 10, 15 months down the line. So we got a birth certificate, immediately saw that it was late registered. In the home country, they register birth certificates quick. Now they need to figure out why that happened and get additional documents, affidavits, school records, medical records, all these kind of different things to prove this person is who they are, their parents are their names, because it could get denied. Now, the embassies are a little more easygoing about this, but USCIS in the last 2 years has gotten extremely strict. And as you know, Anya, like we're dealing with this. It seems like more than half the cases, if not vast majority of them, we're just constantly seeing this issue. It's a weird situation.
Yes, John. What I would love to add is that it might not be only the reason for the denial, but for sure it's gonna delay your case.
Mhm.
So if you want to save some time, it's always better to work with an immigration attorney who catches these things before USCIS can catch them.
Yeah, because sometimes you'll need to get these documentation. USCIS will issue a request for evidence, which says you have time to respond. But sometimes getting the documents we need to verify the birth certificate might take 3, 6 months, 9 months or something. With COVID, there may be shutdowns in your home country. People are not going to work and all that. So you really want to have the attorney catch it at the beginning before you even start the case, and make sure you have all the paperwork, everything we need to avoid that. Yeah, missing a deadline for an RFE or scrambling last second to try to find stuff in a rush. And it's really nerve wracking because you might miss the deadline. So, Anya, thanks so much. And you've been a big help on kind of coordinating these and catching these. Your eye is really good at paying attention to all these
Thank
details.
you.
Yeah, as I said, it's not just dates of birth, it's names spelled wrong, it's people just missing their name, parents' names having issues where it's not consistent. It's just all these weird stuff pop up that we really need to catch. And that's just what we do. So if you are starting one of these cases, especially marriage and fiance cases, which is a special focus of our firm, first go to a website called marriageimmigrationlaw.com and download the Ultimate Marriage Green Card Guide, because it breaks down what the whole process entails, the forms that are existent, and all that kind of stuff. So you have a great idea and strategy about what's going on in your case. Then contact myself and frankly contact several immigration attorneys. That's you have the patience for it. That's the best thing to do, because as I joke around, if you ask 5 immigration lawyers the same question, you're going to get 6 different answers. So you really need to talk to different people. Some of them will not know what they're talking about. 3 of them will, and then you have to compare who you're most comfortable with, who you could talk with ease, whose communication is best, and also price, which is an important factor. But if you did want to schedule a time with their office, email me at info@jqklaw.com and describe your situation, and we could jump into it. and set up a consultation. Now, another topic that is constant on the radar, and it's just all the time people contact me, yourself as well, are the delays that are happening with processing cases. Now, on the bright side, with people doing, for example, adjustment of status in the United States, this is applying for green card, timelines have gotten relatively good for majority of cases. There's always a random ones that take longer, but in Los Angeles, for example, I'm getting marriage adjustment cases done in 4 to 6 months. Northern California between 6 to 12 months. So it's kind of gone back to normal. But Anya, what's going on with consular processing? That downside of it?
Well, it's still so bad.
Yeah,
Have more than I think 40% of embassies, of US embassies, they have not been operating
yeah,
for almost for 2 years already. So there are 500,000 documentarily completed cases
yeah,
that are in NVC, and they just waiting for embassies to take them, and the embassies can't take them because they just some embassies they just don't do interviews.
yeah,
So the other day I was reading about that embassy, a US embassy in Israel. I'm not sure which one. I think it was Tel Aviv, but I might be mistaken. They started this not even program. I don't know what it's called, but like trial of getting video interviews for children under 2 years.
interesting.
Yes. So I hope that maybe they will expand it to other embassies, at least for kids, and maybe for some other kinds of non-immigrant visas.
Yeah,
So people will get more visas. It's going to be easier. It's going to be easier for consular officers. It's going to be easier on people. Um, we will see. We will see how it's going to work. But they're trying to do something with that. But it's just too many cases and not enough people working right now.
yeah. I mean, it's a nightmare. We have these consultations where we tell people, if you're doing consular processing, 2 years waiting is normal right now because MC's there's a line that keeps getting longer, but it's not moving forward. And I kind of have to repeat it 3 or 4 times during consultations for people to believe me. You just can't find it believable. Maybe other people are selling a bill of goods to say it's faster, but it's just not processing. Now, some embassies are that are have better COVID numbers, but if you're dealing with large amount of more than half the population of the world, Philippines, nothing's moving forward for K-1s and marriages, and employment base, forget about it. India, Pakistan, Iran, and chunks of other parts of the world, and I just not moving their cases forward. Now, there's talk about expediting emergency, and I see YouTube videos on this. It is possible. I have done it before. For example, in case of China, we were able to expedite, but it's extreme circumstances. In that Chinese case, the petitioner was diagnosed with cancer, and we had to really just contact a bunch of people to get it up and running. But it's all possible. You can give it a shot, but it's not reliable. They just don't have the bandwidth to be able to deal with this. It's just so many numbers. When you look at the situation in Afghanistan, so many people are waiting in line and they were moving. Now that U.S. Embassy is shut down there, those poor people have to go to other places. Where are they going to go? They're going to be back in the line. They might not have their documents. They're going to have extra background checks that incur. So even if you have your interview for some of these countries, you still have to go background checks, administrative processing, as they call it. So there's just no actual timeline. If you're going to be doing consular processing, there's just no honest timeline for many parts of the world other than just submitting it as soon as possible, getting the ball rolling, and having your place in line, and just hoping for the best. In the meantime, a lot of people talk about applying for a tourist visa. A lot of places won't even allow you to have a tourist visa interview. And if you have a green card case potential, they're probably going to deny it as well. Not guaranteed. You might get it approved, but you have to deal with all these risks and costs that are there. One thing I was going to talk about in a separate segment, but I'll just talk about it now, is with regard to the U.S. Embassy in Russia. Anya, have you heard the news about what happened? Russia became what's called a homeless country on the list of countries. Could you talk about that?
Right. Last week, Foreign Affairs Manual was updated with this information, and Russian nationality was added to the list of it's called homeless nationalities. So basically, in this list, those countries that either don't have U.S. embassy there, or they have like some political bad climate or something like that.
Yeah,
So Russians are there. Um, uh, Iranians,
Yeah, Yemen.
uh,
It's
Yeah, people from Yemen. Um, I don't remember exactly, like,
I mean,
but
it's
yeah.
the list is full of countries. I mean, it's like an 8 country list, but usually it's war torn or big political issue, the U.S. and stuff like that. Russia is kind of like the safest place where it's closed, but the political situation has gotten so dramatically bad between the two countries every year that many Russians already who are dealing with this consular processing have known you can't even get an interview. But the option now, which is actually a good option if you could get a visa for it. The alternative embassy they opened up, is it in Poland, Warsaw, Poland? Is that it? Or
Yes, the embassy was designated Warsaw, U.S. Embassy in Warsaw, Poland. At this embassy now, Polish citizens will be getting their immigrant visas. Belarus citizens will be getting their immigrant visas, and Russians will
wow,
be getting their immigrant visas. And don't forget that Russia has, if I'm not mistaken, like 145 million people living there. Yes, and
yeah,
of course, not all of them will apply for American visas, but it's a lot of people.
hmm
So probably they moved consular officers that used to work in Moscow. They moved them to Warsaw, something like that, um, because a lot of people, they can't speak English, so and they need someone who speaks
yeah,
Russian specifically for them to go through the interview. But I think it's a good move. It's a good move. They announced that they're gonna designate special embassy for Russian citizens in May of this year. So it's been almost like what, around 6 months
yeah.
after they have it done. But it's good. It's
It,
good. All these cases will start moving little by little. But I believe because it's just one embassy working for three different countries. As I said, it's Poland, Belarus, and Russia. I think there will be huge delays specifically in this embassy,
mhm.
unless they're going to prioritize, for example, Polish citizens over Russian citizens. We don't know yet
Yeah,
how it's going
anything's
to work.
possible. And it's going to be better than what poor. I mean, I deal with Iranian cases because we get a lot of Iranians contacting us. They're probably, when it comes to consular processing, one of the worst. But in the when I was telling Iranian families that it's bad, I'm like, the only country as bad as yours, maybe even worse, are Russian cases and how they deal with those, because they have administrative processing as well, delays after the interview. But their embassies weren't even processing in Moscow. They shut it down on the St. Petersburg. They're closing down in Yekaterinburg, I think it was, in Vladivostok. I'm trying. I'm not that good with Russian names. I'm not a Russian speaker.
You got it.
But it's a godsend because there was cases that were stuck. But now you have to also travel to Poland, so there's extra costs. You might have multiple interviews, for example. You might have to come back, and you'll need an EU visa to get there. And I had one client who applied for a Polish visa. They denied him once they found out he's coming for embassy processing for some reason. And so he had to get another visa for EU and kind of get in that way. So if you are one of these cases, you have to kind of plan out how you're going to enter the European Union zone with the visa, because Russian national citizens don't automatically get visas for that country. So it's better and still a headache at the same time.
Right. I just want to add two things. One thing, as far as I know, for now, there is this mandatory quarantine in Poland. So, and for example, if you travel there to get to United States Embassy for your immigrant visa interview, you can ask to be exempted from these quarantine requirements. Apart
Oh,
from, I'm not even talking about Schengen visa that you need to get. Some
yeah, there
people
were
need to get.
quarantines. Yeah, you're right. You have to come in early and spend a couple
Yeah,
days, all that kind of
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Plus medical exam. So now all Russians, I don't know how it's gonna work. Will they get their medical exams still in Moscow and just like go to Warsaw for immigrant visa processing, or they're
Yeah.
gonna get their medicals in Warsaw? Just all these like small logistics, and it's gonna affect a lot of people. It's
Yeah.
gonna make their life harder for sure.
Yeah, all these changes when immigration happens, people think it's paperwork, but really the big work we do is just figuring out these logistics, because it literally changes almost every couple hours nowadays, where it's like every country's different, every embassy deals differently, every medical is different, and just there's so many different parts and they're inconsistent. There's delays. It's very emotionally charged too, because people are separated from their families. They may lose, if they're employment based, they may lose their jobs. So it's a complete disaster, frankly, but there's some light. This Polish embassy situation has helped a lot of Russian nationals be able to finish their embassy processing and come to the United States. Hopefully, the vaccine Sputnik works and FDA approves it, or the WHO World Health Organization approves it, so they get around that issue. Because just having to travel to another country, do a medical checkup, do vaccines, there's additional costs. They're going to have to translate their money into EU. There's currency costs. So it's just like it's more and more expensive for people that are just kind of trying to join their family during the pandemic when jobs are shut down and the like. So I wanted to have a separate segment for this, but I needed to jump into this, especially because you know that region very well. Yeah, your point. So we actually handle a lot of cases from Eastern Europe. We have a Russian speaker yourself on the team. So if you or your family are interested, particularly our folks is family based immigration at this time, to learn more about the process, please email me at info@jqqlaw.com. You can even type in Russian. I won't be able to read it, but Anya will take a look.
I'll
And
take care of that.
yeah, we'll schedule a consultation to really break down the situation, explain what's going on, and take it from there. Just send us an email. Now, the last thing I wanted to mention is kind of related to previous stuff, but this Kinsley case that came about, which is I'm not sure how to get into it properly, but we had these travel bans for many years now under Trump, and the way they designed it is that if you're one of these travel ban countries or a travel ban person, they won't even schedule an interview to give you your visa. There was a court case that came a couple like 2 years ago that mentioned this new change, but this Kingsley case makes it more notarized, and they have to enforce it. We'll see if it happens. But essentially, they still have to issue the visa, but the ban comes in at entry in the United States. Could you better describe that for viewers, Anya?
Yes. So regarding Kinsley case, it came out around 3 or 4 weeks ago. I'm not sure. And The petitioners, they challenged the U.S. government, saying that even though if travel ban is here, you cannot you cannot not issue visas based on this travel ban, because travel ban is just to you can block the
Yeah,
entry into the country, but you cannot block visa issuance.
yeah,
And this, by the way, this proclamation that came out yesterday, new proclamation from dated October 25, that we talked about previously with John, it says somewhere, I don't have it, like I cannot find it right now, but it says in the text specifically that it only applies to entry. So, for example, if you want to get a tourist visa, they will not impose this vaccine requirement on you. Okay, you can still get your visa, but you'll not be able to travel to the United States unless you have vaccine.
mm.
So you can have your visa in your passport, just sitting on your table if you don't want to get vaccine, for example, for some reasons, or you cannot get it, right?
This was such an important decision. I wish it came sooner. This main one because we have all these people in China, Europe, Brazil, everywhere. Large chunks of people, even India. I forgot they were on the list too. They won't even schedule the interview. But at least if they scheduled the interview, issued the visa under the previous travel ban, which is still in place right now. We're recording this. They could have got the visa, went to a country. A lot of people go to Turkey, wait there 2 weeks, and then they enter the United States. But because they wouldn't even issue the visa, they couldn't even go around in the first place, and it's catastrophic for international business. I mean, the U.S. probably lost hundreds of billions of dollars over this not well thought out process and the way they just clunky it forward with it. So I think you're about to say something before if I jumped in.
Yeah, it's just such a sad situation. But again, going back to Kinsley, like this decision became moot, because travel bans, getting all these travel bans are getting rescinded by this proclamation, October 25 proclamation. So all Schengen ban, UK, Ireland, South Africa, India, China, so all this got rescinded. But you need to get vaccine now in order for you to come to the United States if you're a non-immigrant.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's getting better. It's very slow. It's creating their own issues that are going to come up. I'm sure in next week talk we're going to even start then spotting all sorts of glitches in the system. But hopefully, they're working on getting better. It's better than the previous administration where they're focusing on how to make it more difficult. There's a focus now on trying to make it better. It's been extremely slow, very disappointing on all ends when it comes to immigration policy. But at least we're not waking up in a panic every day about the new regulations they pose overnight or on a Friday night over the weekend or something like that. Anya, thank you so much for talking. We'll be back again next week as well. If you guys want to, contact us, please email the office at info@jqqlaw.com to briefly describe the immigration issue that you have, and we'll respond with more information about uh, what we should do with your case and schedule a consultation to talk about in detail so we can give legal guidance. Anya is there as well, but the best thing to do is just email the main office, email direct at info@jqqlaw.com. Thank you for everyone watching this educational program. Thank you, Anya, for coming on as well.
Thank you so much, John. I hope to see you all next week.
Wonderful. Bye bye.
Bye.